Over the last few years, we've been doing quite a few projects at Welldots, focusing in the real estate industry. The different projects we had and also main delivery, which was the building of digital marketing campaigns. And over the last few years, we've been collecting a lot of data throughout the different projects we've had, and we've decided to share the model that we would like to expose today on how to best build a digital marketing campaign for real estate. What we've noticed is that we can summarize the main objective of this campaign in one single thing, one single element, which is the capture of an email address. And this email address is really the data we aim to capture throughout the different project when you run a digital marketing campaign. So how to best generate these leads. And when you take this approach, you will consider the lead or the email address as a real currency. A currency that will have to go through different cycles before eventually converting into a sales. So the first layer, the first phase, it will be the exposition when you expose your project to your audience, after which you will go into a cycle of education where you will teach your audience what you're talking about, what the project is about, and eventually you will enter the data collection phase where this is where you will capture this email address. This is where you will capture any type of data that you can capture about your prospects. Then after, eventually you will go into prospect processing phase before reaching the sales and analyzing those sales. What we've seen is that in the real estate industry, the project have a life cycle that is slightly shorter than any digital marketing project, such as the establishment of a brand, which is the reason why we would like to have a hat, which is more the investor hat, in order to better understand the needs, in order to build a proper digital marketing campaign in real estate. For that purpose, we would focus on return on investment and focus on three categories, which is one, the inorganic visibility, and by definition, this will be all the visibility you would acquire without using organic methods, which is, let's say, the natural way. So anything that you will pay for will be called inorganic visibility. Then point number two would be focusing on engaging through your content. How can you make sure that your content is as engaging as possible? And we'll double click on that point later on. Number three is the management of your prospects. We'll cover that point by having a roadmap that will help you better understand all the milestones, all the different steps you should achieve in order to best manage your prospects. What we do at Welldots is that we always start from the same element, which is how to best create a concept that will be present throughout your whole campaign. And to create a concept, it's quite straightforward. First of all, you need to make sure that you have a story that is attractive, that is as immersive as possible and functional. Once you have that, then you go into the data collection process where you will let your partner, your client, dump as much data as possible. Then you will do your homework to make sure you have a very good and broad understanding of the project itself. That can go from architect plans, the story of the land, the context in which a neighborhood is being designed, or the type of industry that you're trying to target by renting some office space, and so on and so forth. Then number three, you will go into a more technical analysis where you will analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of the project. And last but not least, you will then come up with a concept that will be present throughout your whole campaign. From that concept, you will then be able to start building that model that we would like to share with you today. And throughout all the projects we've had over the last few years, we've been able to design this model, which has four objectives. First of all, it's the objective of the exposure, how to best expose your project out there. And again, if you were to wear your financial hat, your investor hat, then in terms of return on investment, you will have those top 5 returns, which is one, investing into Facebook and Instagram. So social media, again, has the highest return on investment in terms of budget allocation for digital marketing. Number 2 will be emailing campaigns. It has a very low cost of implementation and proportionally quite a high return. Then number 3 will be the real estate portals. Having advertising on the real estate portals also have a quite high rate of conversion because the audience is quite qualified, it knows what it's looking for. And number four would be the flyers. So just having a flyers campaign, depending on the location of your project or the type of good that you're trying to rent or sell, flyers also will rank number four actually in terms of return on investment. And number five will be the Google search and display efforts. Now that's for the first phase, for the first objective of exposure. Now the second objective will be the education objective, how to best educate your audience. And in order to best educate your audience, there will be four highest ranked return on investment, which one will be the website. So the website you will use to present your project. Number two will be the brochure. And number three, the emailing and newsletter throughout the execution of the project. So the content could eventually evolve. You could have different rounds of emailing or newsletters. And number four will be the open doors, when you will have an event eventually to welcome people to discover the project on site eventually. So that's for the objective of education. The third objective will be how to best assist your audience to project themselves. And in terms of projection, the best return on investment will be the open doors, the 360 visits that we see a lot lately, and the configuration. How can you help your audience design their future home, their future office, in order to personalize it and already project themselves into the kind of space. And the last objective will be the objective of closure. How can you close a sale? How can you close a project, the presentation, or investment? Now, for these four objectives, we will then have four different phases. The first phase in this model will be the phase of reaching out. How can you reach from the exposure to the projection? And in order to reach, then you will have an approach that is similar to better understanding the best recipe for cocktail. So the goal here, in order to optimize your reach, is through digital marketing to best understand the recipe, the best mix to use for your cocktail. And here we're talking about budget allocation. So which budget should you allocate? Now, over the last 50 projects we've had, we've been able to draw, let's say, a formula which guides us with regards to budget allocation. What we've learned is that 20% of your digital budget will go into banners on website, like on portal websites, such as homegate.ch or any other website. Now, you will still have, let's say, 15% that will go into emailing and flyers, and the big bulk of the budget that will go into social media, Google search, Google ads and display. Here we're talking roughly about 60% of the budget. And we always like to keep a 5% reserve for what we call the experimentation. So here I will use TikTok as an example because it's the latest social media that have come out there. But it could be anything else. It's keep 5% of the budget as a reserve to experiment something new. And you could be surprised on the return you will get. And in parallel, then you will have all the offline efforts that will be either for print purpose or in newspaper or billboards, for example. So that's with regards to the reach for the digital marketing. And when you talk about reach, there are two components that are very important, which is the distribution, which is what we've seen through the budget allocation, and number two, the content. Now, with regards to the content, there are a few points that we need to keep in mind. First of all, the content has to respect the branding equity. So when we talk about branding, it will be the branding of the project itself. So if your project has a name or a brand, as we can read on the first post, Harmonia, let's say, make sure that you are in line with the branding equity. Make sure that all the content that you will distribute is coherent and that respect the design guidelines. Number two is all content should answer a problematic. So if you have a problem you want to answer, rather it's about pricing level, rather it's about location, rather it's about commuting time, make sure you address this problematic and that you answer it so that you know what's the message, the key message that you're giving out there. Number three would be the tone. Which tone do you choose to have when you address your audience? So obviously, if you have a project that is designed for young students, the tone will be different than if you were to promote a project for a senior audience, obviously. Now, number four, and that's very important, is that every single content that you put out there should be actionable, meaning like there is one and only one action you should expect from your audience. So when I see a content, let's say a post on Facebook, there's only one click that I should click on. Let's say there's one button I should click on. And that's what we call the either call to action, a CTA, or one single action we can expect from our audience. So that's with regards to the content. And what we do at WildDots is that with every single partners that we work with, we share a dashboard that is a live and dynamic dashboard that will allow our partners to have a total visibility on the project, on the efficiency of the project, and also on the return on investment of the different campaigns, so that you can have an idea of how many leads we've captured, how many emails we've captured, what's the return on investment in terms of campaign, in terms of dollar spent with Google or dollar spent with Facebook, in terms of traffic, etc. So this is a dashboard that we always share with our partners from day one. They have access to it, and it's a simple link, and so that they have 24/7 visibility on how good we are doing our job or not, and also on how which measures we've taken to optimize the return on investment of the different actions we've taken through the campaign. So this is the digital marketing in the first phase of reach. Then after you have two phases that will link projection all the way to closure, which will be the visual impact and the innovation. And for these two categories, then visual impact will be, for example, everything that has to do with 3D. It could be images, it could be a video. Now the video obviously will have the same criteria. It will have to be attractive, it will have to be immersive, it will have to answer a problematic, it will have to deliver key message. And that's really the first element of the 3D. Then after also in terms of visual impact, you have everything that has to do with websites in which we can already put some innovation. When we talk about innovation here, we make sure that we guide the navigation, that we make sure that we really guide the users towards the direction we want to take them through. Rather, it's about taking them through a download so that we can collect data, or it's about filling a contact form or different objectives we may have. Now, with regard to innovation, we've seen it earlier. How can you bring a configuration solution? How can you give the possibility to the user for him or her to design the future home or to design the future office he or she would buy or rent? And whenever you go into this innovation phase where you give the possibility to the user to design, then it has two consequences. First of all, it's a way for the user to personalize the future home, and also it helps the user projecting himself or herself into the acquisition of this space. So these are the two key tools for visual impact and innovation. Now, if you don't reach closure at that stage, then you will need to go for another round, and that will be the phase of following up. And in order to properly follow up, I mentioned it earlier in this video, there will be a roadmap to follow. There are different steps that you will need to keep in mind. A proper follow-up will always start with having the right infrastructure to collect the prospects. So make sure that you have all the different tools, all the different softwares or processes that allows you to better collect those prospects, those different email addresses, let's say. Step number 2 will be the database cleaning. Make sure your database is clean, that you don't have robots or any email address that you could not be using or that you could not qualify later on. Number 3 is data amplification. And what we mean by this is that from a little and single email address, you can have a lot more information on your prospect than just his or her email address. And we have a video about that, on how to really build avatars based on a single email address. Then step number 4, it's a verification process. Make sure that everything is accurate, make sure that everything is usable so that you can proper follow through. Then step number 5, it's the different measures that we implement to have automatic callback, let's say 72 hours after the collection of the data. Or as we see in step number 6, also an automation in terms of emailing follow-up. As soon as you collect the data, make sure that there is an interaction that is being started. Make sure that your prospect either gets a call from the brokers or either get an email, or eventually 2 or 3 rounds of email spaced at a different frequency. And that's a way to make sure you nurture your prospects all the way to step number 7, which is the closure of the sales. So this is really the roadmap we wanted to share with you today on how to proper follow up and follow through your prospects. So again, this is the whole model on how to best build a digital marketing campaign in real estate, and we wanted to share it with you today. Bear in mind the 5 key tools at the center, which is digital marketing, 3D website configuration, and brokerage follow-up. Then the different phases that are in the middle layer, which is reach, visual impact, innovation, and follow-up, in order to fill the 4 main objectives which are on the outline layers, which is exposure, projection, education, and closure. I'll leave this model with you guys, and thank you very much for being with us today.